We spent our break fangirling about Angela, so bear with us while we collect our thoughts. Thank you for inviting us to speak here today, Public Policy Forum, and for the organizers. We're usually stuck with our heads down doing the work, so this is great for us to come out and talk about the important work we're doing in digital inclusion. My name is Zina, as they've mentioned, and I'm from CompuCore. We're a high-tech charity that focuses on bridging a digital divide gap for nearly 18 years. We're based out in Ottawa, but our organization's national. We've been providing affordable computers and computer services to low-income communities, students, seniors, Indigenous people, those most affected by the digital divide. There it is. So we're talking about beyond a computer and a connection, and both of our organizations are speaking to the need for digital literacy, as it's been mentioned over and over again today. That's the most important thing that we need to talk about right now, because we offer the access of physical computers, while Shelley's organization, which she'll tell you about in a second, offers the connection. But that's not enough. And after nearly 20 years, for both of our organizations, it's proven more now than ever that that's not enough.
All right, so there's you sort of did your mandate.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so everyone can see it. So yeah, broadly speaking, and some of this has come up through the talks today, but a lot of focus on sometimes facilities, meaning like, do communities have literal access to the internet? And then there's also this idea that if you have a connection and you have a computer, like, great, you're connected. And so both of our organizations have not at all found that to be true. So did you want to go into some detail about some of your programs?
Sure, absolutely. And so just to give a bit of a background, CompuCore begun in the year 2000 as IT mentorship to the charitable sector. So offering, technology services through mentorship to help the charity sector have their connectivity so that they can serve their programs. And after a few years, we realized there was a need in the community itself for affordable computers and for digital literacy programs. So our organization decided to start a social enterprise. And for those of you who don't know what that is, or just briefly, it's a business with a social cause. So we knew that our topic of digital literacy and digital divide and digital access was just not sexy for funders. So we went out and started our own business that was directly giving the people that needed the access and the services what they needed, and while also sustaining our organization and being able to raise funds to run programs. So, and this image here that's displayed, it's a very old image, but we run a ton of digital literacy programs, not just in Ottawa, but across the country, mostly focused on women, seniors, Indigenous people, youth. And so this was a program with Pathways to Education, which is a group that helps high school students graduate at a higher rate from low-income communities. And we connected with them and said, are there any youth that are in your high schools going through your program interested in learning about computers? And so they put out a signage form, and I think it was over 100 students signed up right away, saying they did not have a computer program that they could take in their schools or that they knew about. And so we ran a pilot project, and it was very successful. It was teaching the youth the very fundamentals of computing electronics and how to take apart your computer, how to troubleshoot your computer, and then further into programming, coding. And it was a great way to bring tech professionals from the Ottawa community into an opportunity to volunteer and work with us. So our organization now sees that having the tech sector work with the not-for-profit sector, and doing that sort of cross has really been important for digital inclusion. As it's been said over and over again today, we can't do it alone. So if we can get help from the private and public sector, whether that's donating your used computing electronic, or if it's volunteering your time, if you've got skills, that's exactly the kind of work that we're looking to do. So,
all right. So I'm going to click. Is this working?
Yes.
There we go. All right. So National Capital Freenet, we started in '92 doing dial-up, so way back. And in '92, dial-up was new enough that it automatically came with a digital literacy component, because people were like, what's a modem? How do I connect? It's all text. It's like hard to get through. So we had this member helping members focus. And then in 2005, we started selling, we're a Bell reseller, so we started selling high-speed DSL. So I say high-speed, at the time it was 6 meg was all we offered until about 2013 or 2014. And for about 10 years, we still had lots of folks on dial-up. We still had the folks who were signing up for the 6 meg service, and we had some like discussion groups online where people, again, that members helping members focus, but we really like, here's a connection, go away, be connected. And it was not that stark, and we certainly weren't turning people away, but it was a more informal process. So starting in 2015, we got this idea that's encapsulated up there. So we talk about inclusion here today. We talk about it as access, and we don't just mean physical access. So for us, access means it has to be affordable. It has to be high quality. People have to understand how to use it, and that means a lot of different things, and they have to feel safe online, which again, for some folks that might mean that they're scared of we have some seniors who are scared of using their computers because of ransomware. Just the fear of ransomware keeps them from being online. But then we also talk about, we did a project, the YWCA, I believe, is here today. So we worked on a project with them called Project Shift, and it was addressing cyber violence against girls and young women. So there are women, we spoke to a woman who was on her 4th Facebook profile, and every time, her privacy settings got closer, and she had fewer and fewer friends. So in a world where we make connections and do all of this stuff online, we have women who are reducing their online presence because they don't want to be harassed or experience cyber violence. So again, that's feeling safe online. Privacy is feeling safe online. So when you start to define access this way, it's overwhelming, but it also means that there's a lot that we can be doing. So, all right, I didn't have one nice big image. The slides aren't showing up? Oh. All right, well, they're awesome. We can maybe distribute them later. So we have 3 slides up here. And so one was we were lucky enough just to move to a new space in 2013. So we started getting volunteers who could come onto our help desk. So we have a blend of staff and volunteers. What that means is we have a lot more capacity when people call, so that if they think they're having a problem with their internet. So that's why they call. We sell about 3,300. We have high-speed subscribers, and then we have about 5,000 members total. So we get a lot of calls. So people think they're calling because their internet isn't working, but in fact, it's often something else. And instead of just being like, yeah, that's not us, that's you, thanks so much, have a good day, we're now having the capacity to take them through. We also started offering workshops. I'm gesticulating, but they might not be up there. So we did one that was just for seniors. It was called WiseNet. It was insanely popular. So we actually had to move the first one. It was in our office, and then 40 people wanted to show up, and we thought there'd be 15 to 20. So there was an empty hair salon downstairs, so we moved down there. So just a relentless capacity for people. And honestly, we had a guy who was 92 who wanted to take our Windows 10 workshop. And then we have people, because we identified seniors broadly as 55 plus, because nobody wants to self-identify as an actual senior, so we just had 55 plus. And so then we have people who want to learn how to use a computer in the most basic way. So we had that range. So there we won an award. I'm pointing. We won an award for our volunteer staff blend. And then we also started a program for Ottawa community housing tenants. So there's 32,000 tenants, 15,000 units, and we offer them. Now, It's higher than we would like because as a reseller, we have to pay some basic costs from Bell. But we offer a $25 plan for all Ottawa Community Housing residents, unlimited use. So there are lots of programs that are available from the commercial providers, but they tend to have a cap on use. And so again, part of wanting people to be able to live their lives online is not have this false binary about what people need to do online, which for everyone who talks about it is like applying for jobs, kids doing homework, and then somehow like Netflix or watching cat videos on YouTube is like beyond the pale. And it's like, no, if you're gonna live your life online, you should be able to live your life online fully. So for us, that means unlimited usage. So yeah, where are we at?
Just to mention,
yes.
Based on Alexander's last great presentation, by the way, our organization, for the first time, has sort of moved a program and a project funded by the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, they're the .ca folks, a program to further digital literacy for Indigenous women, specifically. And how the project came about is something interesting that I like to tell, because we were running youth programs, and a lot of our partners would refer the youth to us that are sort of 11 to 15. And we had this wonderful Indigenous woman whose young boy went through our program, and at the end of it, she said, you know, it's great that he loved and loved this program and he's done really well, but you know, I would really love to take a computer class, and I can't find it anywhere, you know. And so I sat with her and we sort of thought about what kinds of things she wanted to learn, and then you know, reached out to some funders, and the project has been way bigger than us and our organization. It's just tipped the scale for the appetite for Indigenous women who have entrepreneurial senses, that did not know what a domain was or did not know how they could bring their businesses online to help their communities. So, you know, I'm happy to say that we've had about 100 women go through that project, which was just a pilot last year, and we plan to continue that because they are the ones most affected by the digital divide. As we talk about these stages and what access means and connectivity, Indigenous women are certainly sort of at that basic level where they're not getting programming, or they're not, you know, it has to do with basic education, but also access to computers and programs for digital literacy. So that past project, I thought, or the presentation, I thought was great by Alex, and thinking of that and what our organization can do and what leaders in your organization can do is about listening to people who, you know, if they come in and say, I'd love to have a program like this, to actually think about it and not worry about who's going to fund it and all that. Just go ahead and do the project, and someone will come along, and it'll be great.
All right.
Yeah, I think we're done. Thank you. Thanks.
We have a bit of time for some questions for Shelley and Zena. We can go to the floor and also on Slido if you have questions. And so perhaps I'll start off with Slido. Okay, so the first one with the most amount of votes, being this democratic process that it is, what are the challenges that people have that we don't normally think about?
Loaded one.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I think we assume that because people have smartphones, potentially, or smart TVs, or any of those devices, that means that they are digitally literate and we don't have to sort of help them anymore. And so I think what happens, and there's been studies, so the Public Interest Advocacy Center during the CRTC process with an Affordable Action Coalition, they were called, did studies that showed that people were scrimping on food so that they could have access to either internet or internet through their phone. And so then we just think, okay, well, they've got the phone, we're good. So they're a check mark in the column. And so one is that's not enough, even from a just, you can't do as many things on a phone as you think. But then second of all is, are people using their device, be it a phone, a tablet, a computer, in a kind of limited way, or do they know all of the things that they could do with it? And so, yeah, that to me is like, yeah.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I also think another challenge that at least us at frontline workers can see is people not knowing that they have choices, that they have options. When they find out that you could purchase a computer, whether it be online or at a local refurbisher shop, they don't realize that they have that option. So some go, ages with a broken computer, which affects their job and their school because they can't go to Apple and purchase a $2,000 laptop. And so we have to, let them know that there's opportunities and options. So even when they come to us, it's not about competition or business. We will tell them different options that they have, and that's a big part of what I train my staff for, is to say that when people come in here, give them as much information as you can give them, because it's not just about our organization. We're here to solve a larger problem, and it won't hurt our business to be, the front workers for people to say, you have opportunities and options elsewhere. You can find things online. You can rent a computer. You can go to your local library. It's important to do that.
There's a nice note here that I have to read. It says, my sister lives in the Boons, near Ottawa. For ages, Freenet was her only access to the internet, so thank you.
Ah, I love those stories.
You just turned 25.
I grew up in the Boons near Ottawa, so I have felt a personal connection to that. One more question from Slido, and then we'll go to the audience. How can we replicate and scale your organization? How can we make more community broadband adaptation organizations in communities all over Ontario?
Funding.
Yeah, funding is a big part of it. One of the things that I was so excited about when Angela was talking, so my background is community radio, and I used to run a national organization in community radio. We don't really have the NDIA equivalent or the community radio equivalent of a national organization here. So being able, it's awesome. Like Zina and I have been able to do so much because we found each other, but we're strapped. And so there's other people who are doing good work. I don't know them. And so meeting them would be great. And then, so getting the funding to pull together and then getting the funding to start generating ideas. So Zina and I are working on a project now because we met each other and then we were able to get funding. So we're a $1.8 million organization, so it sounds pretty good for a small not-for-profit. Most of that is my ins and outs with Bell, and we're strapped. And so if somebody wanted to scale, I'm like, that's awesome. I need the capacity, like the time to discuss it, and the capacity, and then the money, and all of those options. Yeah, but we'd love to.
Absolutely, and for scaling, it's a question that we always get from funders, and we say, as a national organization, and we've been able to mobilize and help those living, very up north and in different parts of Ontario and different parts of the country. But it wasn't a sexy topic up until a few years ago, which now all the attention is on coding, which is great. Our organization does coding, but a lot of the attention and funding is now going to that. And a comment made earlier by Angela was about amplifying groups like us who are doing this work already. Finding it and raising the awareness of those groups are really important. So we always say, if we want us to scale, people have to know that we exist, and they have to know that the work that we do is important. And we have numbers, and we have measuring tools to let people, our organization is now at 18 years, and we've distributed over 70,000 computing electronics in Canada. And it's something that people don't know, and I'm proud about it, and I love telling people. But there has to be people willing to champion that for us and to let people know that it exists in Ontario. So hopefully this starts with that.
We will amplify that message. Now to you. Yes.
Hi, I don't know if I need that. I once bought a cell phone for my son who was living on a reserve on an island, needed connectivity. I bought him a cell phone. I was in a mall, a Rogers store or one of those digital stores, and the salesman said, oh yeah, this is what you need. I took it home. It didn't work. Phoned Rogers, this doesn't work. It didn't work because it didn't work where they lived. There were certain phones that would work on this reserve, and this phone is the only one that works on that reserve, and that phone is the only one that works over there. And then there's the issue of, are you close enough to a tower? So I was really upset by the fact that I was sold a package that included a contract, a 3-year contract, and they weren't able to provide the service. And when I complained, their response was, well, just pay. I said, I'm not going to pay you. Their response was, well, you pay the whole contract and pay it right now. So I'm just wondering, how can we all work together to get the marketing machine to stop taking advantage and selling things we can't use? In the end, I managed to find a woman whose husband was Indigenous, whose job required to travel from reserve to reserve to reserve, and he had a list of which phone he had to use on which reserve. And that's how we got a phone that worked. But only because she happened to be married to him. Not because Rogers knew that. Only because she happened to be married to him. So how can we put pressure on big business to correct these issues and to truly, if they're selling me a product, to truly sell me a product that works for me?
So a couple shout outs. So the CRTC has, and I always forget what it stands for, but the CCTS is a complaints mechanism for people for the telecom industry. There's also now the wireless code, so things are getting better. A big part of what there's like the list of what we do, I'm like proud of what we've done. The list of what I think we should and could be doing is huge. And one of them is around public education. So we have people who, their kid gets an iPad because somebody's like, here's a gift of an iPad, and they don't have an internet connection. You know, and so it's like, that's beyond sort of, so public education I think helps. And then again, back to Angela's point about when people come together, if there's an organization or organizations, they can do the advocacy work. You know, because Zena and I are like sweating out the workshop details. I'm like registering for people for workshops and then like doing a budget and blah, blah, blah. But I need somebody who can go higher level and be like, I see this happening across communities and let's push for better. Yeah.
And a quick plug-in for that of something that we're attempting to do is we're working on a project called Digital Access Day, and a part of that is about holding people accountable, finding out who we need to talk to, not just anecdotes like this, which are very important, but happening at a higher level, and finding out solutions for them beyond us and what we could do. And that meant bringing people to the table that were from Rogers or Bell, someone inside that we could talk to and say, these are real problems happening. You know, what are the solutions? How can we work with organizations like ourselves, but also with, you know, big for-profit companies? They need to be a part of the conversation if we're going to have any sort of solution. So sorry about that, but it'll get better.
Thanks so much, Shelley and Zena. I'm starting to get cyberbullied because they're being really rude and they're telling us to wrap up. Right. I think that's Nasheen back there. She's just getting a little bit nasty. And so we'll have to listen to her and wrap up. But thank you so much for joining us. It's a fascinating discussion. So our last talk before lunch and before refreshed coffee is from David Best. He's from the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, and it's our pleasure to welcome David here this morning.
Where's the microphone? Is this? Just there. Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. You can shout out. I know you're out there. Don't bother waving. Don't bother waving. Just shout. You know, artificial intelligence is amazing, and we live in such exciting times. Are you familiar with facial recognition software? Software that, you know, it's come out, it's very popular now with facial recognitions. You know, it's got a great crowd. You know, amazing. You know, hey, smile. We got a great day here. Fortunately, I can't read your name tag. Anyways, you're all smartly dressed and the clock's ticking. So, the question is, what is the knowledge and systemic gaps that keep blind, visually impaired, and deafblind people from participating in the digital world? If I had the time, I would give you, stop talking to me. Okay, talking to me. Okay, if I had the time, I'd give you background information on the global economic and social trends that impact productivity and market and business growth, because understanding the digital divide that differentiates business success and business failure would give you a greater understanding of the digital accessibility gaps that marginalize people through availability, affordability, and usability of technology. We have information all around us. Information is bombarding us every day. Information that cannot be translated into knowledge is basically just noise. So how do we get that? Design is the bridge between information and communication. Design is all around us. However, if the tools we use do not communicate in a way that we can perceive the message, the information, then we are outside of the bounds of understanding what's going on. We cannot participate, we cannot make smart decisions. So that means that digital communications is not just about the delivery of accessible products and services. Digital accessibility is not just about using more technology, but rather digital design is about transforming information-based policies and communication ecosystems in a way that the communication channel will bridge the information and understanding for those people that are marginalized. The failure to get this right by government is not just resulting in unhappy consumers, but it results in marginalized citizens. So basically, there are three barriers that people with vision loss face. And if I can get through them, there's the attitude, standards, and engagement. So we all want to do the right thing, but it's identified that attitudes are the major barrier for people with vision loss in society today. We all want to do the right thing. We all have best intentions. However, organizations develop their own cultural attitudes, which tend to steamroll our best intentions. So most people with disabilities don't want to self-identify, which is an option I don't have, as hard as I try. As we progress from the Industrial Revolution into our knowledge age, people with vision loss have steadily declined in the employment opportunities. And it's estimated today that there's about 80% unemployment. Then the question is why? So there's a lot of digital, what I call blind spots. So for example, one is our government model for employment. The Discovery for Ability program states on the website that people with disabilities do not need accommodations. Well, that eliminates me because I depend on technology. Government employment programs tend to fund employers to buy assistive technologies and training. They do not support the disabled person directly. So this goes against the grain of the global trends, because we know that people no longer work for the same employer for an extended time. And we know that companies are downsizing and contracting resources, creating a self-employment and an entrepreneurship market, which we cannot participate in because we don't have the resources. My experience over the last 30 years or so has been that I've had to deal with project managers that were committed to on time, on budget. I had to deal with managers that were passed up by promotion or had a bad day, and I had to take it out on me. I have to deal with infrastructure, IT, that are pressured to come up with security, privacy, and accessibility solutions without clear definitions and guidelines. So the focus of accessibility should be on productivity, not disability, and the focus for digital design should really be on the closing the digital divide between the understanding of accessibility of our leaders and decision makers and the management implementation strategies of management, because what we say is not necessarily what we do. The second barrier that's been identified is standards. We have a lot of standards and regulations around us. Infrastructures have been designed by designers that design according to their perception. That is, icons under glass, mouse clicks, and what have you. So what we need to consider is design of infrastructures impacts product development, workplace procurement, management processes, and leadership strategies. Without doing this right, we create a marginalized group because the bridge of communications does not get from information to the understanding of the individual. So an example, there was at one time there was a hot debate of curb cuts, and people were against the idea of curb cuts, but once they were done, everybody loved them. That is, everybody except those who were visually impaired, because it was a risk hazard. So the designers had to go back to the drawing board and come up with tactile curb cuts. Today we're repeating history because buildings and facilities are not implementing digital communication strategies. A recent example is the Ryerson Student Center, $100 million building, no digital communication services, and Bluetooth indoor navigation, QR code readers, smartphone guides, and tactile indicators are not new technology. The third barrier that we face is the most significant, and that's the access to real-time current information. Access means engagement, and if we cannot be engaged, we cannot participate. So if a process is not accessible, we simply cannot participate in the activity. So open and transparent processes are not necessarily inclusive. So to bring it closer to home, the Public Policy Forum website is not AODA compliant, and thus it's a barrier to me. I cannot participate in the online forums. But we know that government is committed to accessibility. And we know that because the Ontario Digital Services is working very hard to develop strategies that not only communicate through visual, but also through audio and tactile methods. However, I have to say, bless you, Hillary. I know you have a challenging job, but there are some serious digital blind spots in our current model that disengage blind people from participating in the design and development of the digital dialogue. I wish I had more time because I'd love to talk about augmented reality. Virtual reality has been with us for several decades. Augmented reality is now probably in its third and fourth generation. But although that is the case, we do not have access to the emerging technologies. We have no resource to provide availability, affordability, or usability of the emerging technologies. So the conclusion is, what's the mystery here? Why is the communication gap between information and understanding so wide? Ontario has world-class innovators. We have technology, we have the market, and yet we seem to lack leadership and vision. The shocking truth about disability disengagement? Well, it's because people with vision loss simply have not been invited to the digital dialogue table. With all of the accessibility barriers, with the problems of getting to forums like this, getting online, we simply have not been able to engage. The current model seems to say, we will build it, you use it. We'll accommodate, you innovate. So how can we change this? There's three things that I would like to say that we could do. First, we must shift our cultural attitude model of colonialism to a cultural attitude of multicultural modernism. Secondly, we must be more accountable for the responsibilities of implementation and enforcement of digital design that includes all communication channels. And thirdly, we must take positive action through open and inclusive measures that create direct support resources for people with vision loss. Otherwise, we will continue to be marginalized. And I think we could do this through an innovation center. Ontario really needs to develop an innovation center where we can connect innovators with disabled people. We can connect investors with those early adopters that want to get emerging technologies into the hands of people and get organizations connected. We need an innovation center that can be used as a resource for government leaders to be trained and provided resources. So I thank you for your attention, and I really would encourage you to please introduce yourself today, because if you don't introduce yourself, you simply don't exist in my world. And if you don't exist in my world, there can be no dialogue. So thank you very much.
Okay to stay up for some questions?
Oh, questions?
Yeah. Slido is very, they have lots of questions for you.
Oh boy.
So, David, thank you very much for those very, very intriguing and in some cases upsetting remarks. How are new voice-activated technologies like Alexa changing digital inclusion positively or negatively?
Voice-activated and response systems are opening the doors to a lot of people, especially those people with vision loss that do not have the technical background to use technologies the way I use it. These voice-activated systems are really opening the doors to make it easy and usable for them.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. Okay, I have been trying to get UX testers with disabilities to help us test information products and services with no success. How can I find people?
Ah, good question. I don't know if I could answer that. There are organizations, there are groups of people. I am an advocate for the AEBC, Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, and there is a group of people in that across Canada that have technical skills, testing skills, political skills, all kinds of stuff. But I think the challenge to keep in mind is that testing software quality is a special skill. So you can have anybody come in, maybe who's visually impaired, and test it using a screen reader, but you may not get the response you're looking for. So I suggest that as you're developing your testing model, first of all, develop a functional testing model where you iron out all of the functional and automated processes. You then take it to a usability model where you can actually develop it using people with technology skills, but also those who do not use technology. So where do you find these people? I don't know. They're all over the place. They're just not connected. And I really don't know how we can get people more involved, because I think the more organizations, and as I said, people really want to do the right thing, and organizations want to develop accessible products, but we're so disconnected that it's hard to find us.
Okay, excellent. As a developer, how do I stress to decision makers that designing with accessibility in mind from the beginning is the way to go?
Oh, all they have to do is look at the AODA strategy, because the AOD strategy, the purpose of it is really to raise the social bar of expectations to a new level of behavior. And it's very obvious from market reports that companies that integrate the AODA strategy, not just to put it in there, but they actually put it as a baseline in their go-to-market strategy, they come out on top because they are developing processes that meet the consumer expectations. So leaders, and this is the challenge, and this is what I had mentioned, that the communication of accessibility understanding of our decision makers and our management implementation strategies don't always match up. And so we need to let business leaders know that this is a business strategy. This is not an accommodation strategy.
Very good point. Well, yeah, please apply. We'll go to a question from the room. Claude has a microphone right here.
Thank you, David. As you look at the technologies that are evolving and coming on stream now, to your point that technologies can create digital divides as well as reduce digital divides, what are the areas that you're most concerned on that we really need to be paying attention to as new technologies come on stream, that they aren't making things worse?
Yeah. I think one of the challenges we have in modern times is that at one time, innovation was to resolve a human condition. So, you go back to when the telephone was invented. It was invented and developed for people with hearing loss. Today, our innovation is really focused on influence and persuading people to create a new market, is trying to create a demand for profit. And accessibility has been put into the second place. So we see now technologies coming out like artificial intelligence, voice recognition, facial recognition. But all these things are being developed by corporations for a purpose. There's a huge race on for control right now, and we have to somehow get back to basics and say, okay, these technologies, I could not get along without my iPhone. I travel everywhere because it gives me environmental information about where I am on the street and the buildings I'm going to. But if that technology is not designed with the accessibility in mind, I have to wait until the mainstream society gets it, uses it, and then they put accessibility in it. I have been marginalized, and I cannot progress without that. So I think what we have to do is look at the design and development. And like I said, I think the Ontario government, if they wants to sustain global leadership, we really need an innovation center that can take the corporate research and development of artificial intelligence and get it into the hands of local innovators and disabled groups to say, we want to use it today. We don't want to wait 2 or 3 years until it's fully developed. We need emerging technologies today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. You're really an inspiration. Thank you.